You may have carried this feeling without ever naming it. That subtle tension inside you, as if some unseen judge is measuring your every emotion, every hesitation, every imperfect detail of who you are. So you start scanning yourself for flaws, tightening your grip on your thoughts, your reactions, your identity, hoping that if you can fix enough, polish enough, hold yourself together tightly enough, you'll finally become acceptable. But the more you squeeze, the more you feel yourself slipping. It's like trying to smooth the surface of water with your hands. The harder you press, the more it breaks apart. You aren't exhausted because you are broken. You're exhausted because of the way you keep trying not to be. You keep shaping yourself into something better, as if the only path to peace is through constant correction. But I want to offer you a quieter truth. Nothing inside you needs fixing. Not the fear, not the doubt, not the emotions that arrive uninvited. These things are not signs of damage, they're signs of depth. And when you stop pushing against yourself, even a little, something unexpected happens. You don't fall apart, you settle. You soften into your own existence. And the parts you once feared begin to breathe again. That's the moment you start to feel whole, not because you've repaired anything, but because you finally stop treating yourself like something that's broken. You wake up each day carrying an expectation that you should already be better than you were yesterday. You believe you should be calmer by now, stronger by now, more certain and composed by now. And when you're not, when your thoughts scatter or your emotions rise without permission, you immediately assume you've slipped backward. Some quiet part of you whispers that you've failed again, that you're still behind, that you're still not who you're supposed to be. Without noticing it, you hold yourself the way someone holds a blueprint for a building that never seems close to completion. Every fear feels like a structural weakness. Every moment of uncertainty feels like a crack spreading across the foundation. You walk around inside your own skin as if you're monitoring a construction site, waiting for the moment something collapses. No matter how much you grow, you quietly assume you should be further along, more controlled, more refined. You rarely allow yourself the simple truth that being human means being unfinished. This pressure doesn't arrive at once. It builds slowly, accumulating in the small ways you judge yourself throughout the day. You tell yourself you should have responded differently in a conversation. You should have been more confident. You should have known what to say. You should have been less emotional, or maybe more emotional, depending on the moment. You carry an inner checklist that never ends, and the weight of constantly evaluating yourself leaves very little room to simply exist. You may not even realize how often you do this. It happens in the silence between thoughts, in the tension held in your shoulders, in the way your breath shortens when you feel exposed. It happens when you rehearse your identity in your mind, hoping to present a version of yourself that no one can criticize. It happens when you swallow your truth because you fear it will be misunderstood. Over time, the pressure becomes so familiar that you mistake it for your personality. I don't want to take away your desire to grow. Growth is natural, and your longing to evolve comes from a sincere place within you. But I want to draw your attention to the moment when effort becomes a quiet form of self-punishment, when improvement becomes a requirement instead of an invitation. That moment is subtle, but it changes everything. It turns self-awareness into self-surveillance. It turns aspiration into anxiety. It turns your inner world into something you must constantly manage instead of something you can inhabit. You have been trying to fix yourself for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to breathe without measuring your breath. You've forgotten what it feels like to feel something without analyzing whether it is appropriate. You've forgotten that you were never meant to live inside a constant state of correction. The truth is not that you're failing. The truth is that you're tired. Tired from trying to hold yourself together. Tired from believing you're not allowed to be anything less than perfect. And beneath all of that effort, there is a softer truth waiting for you. Nothing inside you needs to be repaired. What you need is space. What you need is permission. What you need is the simple remembering that being alive does not require being flawless. Your mind is like a room lit by shifting sunlight, a living space that changes tone throughout the day. At times, the light pours in so generously that everything inside you feels open and clear. Other times, the brightness softens, and the room takes on that gentle half-shadow where thoughts grow quieter and emotions move at a slower pace. This inner room is spacious. It has depth. It has corners where old memories rest, corners where new possibilities wait like unopened windows, corners where your softer truths sit patiently. But you almost never see it this way. Instead of noticing the entire space, you fixate on one dim patch on the floor and convince yourself that something profound has gone wrong. That single patch becomes the only thing you pay attention to. One anxious thought, one misunderstood moment, one feeling that doesn't behave the way you want it to. You lean in closer, studying it as if it holds evidence of your inadequacy. And the closer you move, the more it expands, until you begin to believe the whole room is dark. But nothing is ruined. You are just standing too close, too focused on one small detail to notice the fullness of who you are. Inside this room, light is always shifting, and that shift is natural. No space stays bright in every corner all the time. Shadows are not signs of damage. They are part of the room's dimension, part of what makes it real. Yet you treat them as if they shouldn't exist, as if their presence means something is wrong with you. When one corner dims, you assume the whole structure is failing. When one thought is heavy, you believe your entire mind is flawed. You forget that shadows only appear because the light is present somewhere else in the room. You forget that darkness and brightness are partners, not enemies. If you stepped back just a little, if you softened your focus, you would see that the space you call you has always been larger than any single emotion. You would see that the room breathes, expands, contracts, and shifts in ways that are completely natural. But you've grown so used to examining yourself under a microscope that you rarely notice the actual architecture of your inner world. The architecture is not broken. It is spacious and intricate and capable of holding so much more than you allow yourself to feel. I want you to imagine, gently, what would happen if you stopped staring at the dark patch on the floor. Imagine lifting your gaze, allowing the rest of the room to come into view. You might see colors you forgot were there. You might notice how the sunlight lands on the wall, creating warmth instead of judgment. You might feel the air moving softly, reminding you that your inner life is not stagnant but constantly shifting, constantly reshaping itself. When you stand back, the room doesn't grow brighter because you forced it to. It grows brighter because you finally gave yourself enough distance to see the light that was already there. You begin to understand that your mind has always been a living space, not a problem to solve. A space with corners and textures and changing light. A space where nothing has ever been fundamentally wrong, only misunderstood in the moments when you pressed your face too close to the floor. You often believe that the only way to grow is by fixing yourself, as if your inner world were a machine made of gears and wires that must be adjusted each time something feels out of place. But humans don't evolve through constant repair. You are not an appliance with broken parts waiting to be replaced. Your emotions, your doubts, your moments of confusion or chaos are not signs of malfunction. They are signals, movements, shifts in your internal weather. They come and go the way clouds pass overhead, shaping the sky without ever damaging it. You've been taught to treat discomfort as evidence that something is wrong with you. A wave of sadness appears and you assume you've failed. A spark of anxiety rises and you think you're back at the beginning again. But these inner movements are not errors. They are simply the ways your mind processes reality. Sometimes you feel clear. Sometimes you feel foggy. Sometimes your inner world storms. And sometimes it opens into a bright, spacious calm. None of these states are permanent, and none of them define you. They only describe where you are in the moment. Your mind is not asking you to repair it. It is asking for room. It is asking for gentleness. It wants the freedom to shift without being punished for shifting, to feel deeply without being labeled dramatic, to rest without being labeled lazy, to change direction without being labeled inconsistent. You don't need to correct your natural movements, you need to honor them. Your internal weather is not meant to be controlled, it is meant to be understood. Think about how you treat yourself when you're overwhelmed. You push harder, you criticize more, you tighten every part of your being in an attempt to stay stable. But stability doesn't come from clenching. Stability comes from allowing the movement to happen without declaring it a crisis. When you give yourself permission to feel what you feel, the emotions move through you instead of getting trapped inside you. When you stop demanding that your mind stay clear all the time, the fog eventually lifts on its own. Growth happens when you stop fighting your inner world long enough to actually hear what it's trying to say. Sometimes anxiety is simply asking you to slow down. Sometimes sadness is asking you to acknowledge something you've ignored. Sometimes confusion is asking you to take a breath and let yourself be human. None of this is brokenness. It's communication. I remind myself of this often, because I know how easy it is to slip back into the mindset of self-repair. The mindset that treats every imperfection as an emergency. And I offer this to you not as a rule or a demand, but as a soft alternative. You don't need to fix yourself to become whole. You need to understand yourself to become free. When you stop diagnosing your emotions as problems, you begin to uncover the quiet intelligence behind them. You start to see that your inner life isn't damaged or unstable. It's alive, responsive, and capable of guiding you if you stop punishing it for moving the way living things move. There are moments when your mood drops for no obvious reason, when a heaviness settles inside your chest the way dusk settles over a quiet street. Your instinct is to react quickly. You start scanning your mind, trying to explain it, justify it, eliminate it before it spreads. You ask yourself what went wrong, what triggered it, what flaw inside you allowed it to happen again. You treat the shift as a malfunction, as if a single passing emotion is a sign that your entire inner world needs immediate repair. But before you rush into fixing, I want to invite you into a different kind of response. Imagine, just for a breath, that you didn't attack the feeling. Imagine you simply let it sit there, the way a cloud drifts across the sky without threatening the sky itself. The presence of a cloud doesn't mean the atmosphere is broken. It only means the weather is changing, and weather is allowed to change. When you stop confronting your emotions like intruders and begin observing them like visitors, something softens inside you. You might notice that the heaviness rises, sways, reshapes itself, and sometimes dissolves without you needing to do anything. In those quiet moments, the emotion becomes lighter, not because you forced it to be, but because you stopped tightening around it. You stopped demanding that it leave. You stopped assuming that it meant something was wrong with you. Instead of fighting the cloud, you let the sky hold it. There is a small example of this that happens more often than you realize. Think about the times you've been sitting alone, maybe in a kitchen or in your room, when a wave of sadness or restlessness appears out of nowhere. Your first reaction is tension. You straighten your posture, your breath becomes shallow, your mind speeds up as it tries to figure out the cause. But the emotion doesn't need a cause. It only needs acknowledgement. When you take a slow breath and let the sensation exist without labeling it, something inside you loosens. The sadness does not deepen. The restlessness does not grow sharper. Instead, it becomes gentle, almost transparent, because you're no longer feeding it with fear or resistance. This approach isn't passivity, it's clarity. It's what happens when you allow your inner world to move the way it was designed to move. Emotions are not permanent structures. They are temporary shifts, atmospheric changes, internal weather patterns. They do not need to be controlled. They simply need room to move through you. When you observe instead of judge, you create that room. And in that space, everything settles more naturally than you expect. I want you to remember this the next time your mood drifts into a quieter, darker place. You don't need to diagnose yourself. You don't need to fix anything. Let the feeling be what it is, a moment, not a verdict. If you stop interfering, if you stop tightening around the discomfort, it will eventually pass on its own. Not because you forced it to, but because you finally allowed yourself to feel without fear. There is a moment in your inner journey when something subtle but profound begins to change, and it happens the instant you stop calling yourself a problem. For so long, you've interpreted every imperfect emotion, every hesitation, every dip in energy as evidence that something in you is broken. But the shift begins when you recognize that imperfection does not equal failure. It never did. What feels like weakness is often just your humanity trying to speak to you in its natural language. What feels like a setback is often just a cycle completing itself. What feels like confusion is usually a sign that you are expanding into a place you have not yet learned how to name. I want you to see this with clarity. Your nature is not a mistake. The way you feel deeply, the way your mind wanders, the way your emotions rise and fall, these are not shortcomings. They are expressions of a living inner world. Sensitivity is not a flaw. It is awareness. Confusion is not malfunction. It is the opening of new understanding. And the moments when you feel uncertain are not failures, but invitations. Gentle reminders that you are not a machine built to operate perfectly at all times. You are a living process, alive, shifting, responsive. You are not a damaged object in need of endless correction. Real transformation begins when you stop trying to force yourself into a rigid idea of who you think you should be. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself is the moment you finally begin to understand yourself. And with understanding comes breath, the kind of breath that softens the chest, loosens the spine, and makes room for parts of you that have been held too tightly for too long. When you let yourself exist without judgment, your inner world rearranges itself naturally. Emotions that once felt heavy become lighter. Thoughts that once spiraled begin to slow. The space inside you grows, not because you cleared it out through force, but because you stopped crowding it with self-blame. In that space, you begin to meet yourself with honesty instead of criticism, curiosity instead of fear. This is the shift, a return to your own aliveness, a recognition that you were never broken, a remembering that everything inside you was always trying to find its way back to balance, if only you would allow it. As you arrive at this quiet moment, I want you to turn your attention inward with the softest possible touch. Ask yourself, without pressure or urgency, what part of you've been trying to repair simply because you assumed it was broken. Notice how quickly your mind searches for flaws, how instinctively you move toward correcting yourself before you've even paused to understand what's actually happening inside you. There may be pieces of your inner world that have never needed fixing at all. Only patience, only space, only the chance to be seen without judgment. And consider this: if you stop chasing a better version of yourself for just one day, if you set down the constant pressure to improve, what small truth might finally rise to the surface? What emotion might reveal its purpose? What softness might return to your breath? What quiet part of you might whisper something you've been missing? You don't need to force an answer. You only need to make room for it. Because when you stop treating yourself like a project and start treating yourself like a being, something inside unclenches. Something begins to open. And in that opening, a more honest version of you begins to emerge, one that was there all along, simply waiting for space to breathe.